Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Rhea Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. All right. Hi, everyone. This is Nonprofit Nation. I'm so thrilled that you're here. I'm really excited to be in your earbuds in your car, wherever you're listening. I'm Rhea Campbell. The topic today, the old rules of fundraising are dead. And I'm sure that, like everyone else in the sector, you're tired of chasing after $20 donations like a squirrel on espresso, which is a term coined by my guest today, Rhea Wong. Now, Rhea has over 20 years experience in the nonprofit space as an executive director and a frontline fundraiser. She's the author of Get That Money, Honey, and a sought-after speaker. And she's helped hundreds of nonprofit organizations raise millions of dollars for their causes. And in this episode, we're going to break down the old rules of fundraising, how we can move away from these survival mode tactics that leave us feeling icky and start nurturing genuine relationships with our donors. We will also talk about Giving Tuesday. We're going to talk about the fundraiser X factor, the importance of mindset shifts, and a lot of other things. So I really want you to welcome virtually, you can be clapping in your car, wherever you are. Welcome, Rhea Wong. Thanks for being here, Rhea.
Julia, thank you so much for having me. It is always so fun to hang out. And I think maybe I was one of your first guests when you first launched this baby out into the world.
Yes. And I meant to look it up. And I really believe you were probably in the first 5 guests. And your episode has over like 1,500 downloads. I meant to
shut the front door.
Yes, I meant to check for you. I will check for you after this episode. But yeah, still one of the most downloaded episodes.
Oh, thanks. That's so great.
Absolutely.
Well, you are a fantastic interviewer. I am a fangirl myself of all the work that you do. So it's a mutual admiration society.
It is. It absolutely is. And we were just talking about your email newsletter. I'm an avid reader. And in the latest newsletter, you talk about the valley of despair and how everything seemed to break in 2024. What happened to fundraising this year?
So It's really like 4 stages, right? So the first stage is when we start something new. We start a nonprofit, we start a new job. We call it the peak of Mount Stupid, right? We're like, I don't know what I don't know.
Mount Stupid. I love that.
Yeah. So it's this Dunning-Kruger effect, which is like you're confident because you actually have no idea how little you know. Right. So it's like ignorance is bliss. You're like, I can do this. I'm a smart person. I should be able to figure this out. And then very quickly, you descend into the valley of despair once you realize the extent of your incompetence and lack of knowledge. And I also think the valley of despair happens when circumstances change. So I've talked about this with Brooke on my last podcast. When we hit rough times, there's sort of three levels that we go through. The first is we blame the circumstances. Oh, it's the election. It's the war in Ukraine. It's the war in inflation, like all the things, right? Then the second layer is we blame other people. Oh my God, my board's not doing what they're supposed to do. My funders aren't doing this. And my donors aren't doing this. And the third level, which I think is really where you take back your power, is it's you. Like you're not good enough. Your marketing isn't good enough. Your messages aren't landing. And once you actually get to this realization of maybe it's me, that's when you can actually do something about it, because you can't do anything about other people. You can't change the circumstances of the world. It's like, I don't know, my mom probably said, like, you can only change yourself, right? So change, or actually what she used to say is fix your face. So fix your face because you have no control over everything else. So what I think happened in 2024 was a lot of us are riding kind of this pandemic wave, financially speaking. Look, obviously the pandemic was very terrible in many, many ways, but for a lot of nonprofits, they actually made more money than they ever did because people were at home. People had some extra money. We were all flush with cash because the government was giving us checks. And so we were donating and we were seeing the need, right? So we were donating. I think that happened with institutional funders. It certainly happened with individuals. So we got that pandemic bump. And then the tide went out. And as Warren Buffett say, when the tide goes out, you can see who's naked. Like the tide went out because that's when we couldn't just count on people's money coming in without a lot of effort. And so what happened, I think, in 2024 was a confluence of different things, right? It was the pandemic bump going away. It was fears about inflation and recession. It was actually the stock market is doing pretty well, but it was also a lot of static and tension around the election, and people were just totally saturated with messages. And so, and I'm sure you're seeing it in your space, which is like, why aren't people responding to my messages? People are tired. They're exhausted. And by the way, anybody who's listening to this, Act Blue, you can stop spamming my text messages. Like, please. I don't need more of that.
I still haven't figured out how to sign out of that. I study it as a marketer, so I am intrigued by it, but I know that it turns so many people off.
Yeah. I get the sense of urgency, but what I don't like about it is I did not opt in to that, right? I opted in to give a donation, and all of a sudden, like, you sold my information to every local congressman running. And I'm like, wait, I don't even know who are you? How did you get my number? So that is why I think we need to talk about old rules are dead, because I think a lot of the playbooks that we're using turn people off, which is why I think we just need to rethink the whole thing.
100%. So let's dive into that, because that's the topic of this episode, and that's something you speak about a lot. And I firmly also believe this, but I'd love to hear your take on it. The old rules, the old ways of fundraising are dead. What do you mean by that? And what are the rules that we need to be sort of getting away from?
Oh my gosh.
So many.
How much time do we have? Okay.
Right,
and actually,
true.
Chime in here too, because obviously with your expertise in social, I'm sure you have seen this a lot in your work, but I think a lot of the ways that we're taught about fundraising were developed in a different era, right? It's this concept of, I have the world of potential donors out there, whoever they are, and then I qualify them by doing things like wealth screens, or I try to Google search them, or I'm like looking at who else they're giving to. And then I try to cultivate them by reaching out, trying to have a coffee with them, trying to get them to a meeting, et cetera. And they're largely ignoring me. And if they do respond, I'm putting them in a cultivation process that they're not even aware that they're in. So similar to ActBlue, but ActBlue, sure, maybe at some point they asked my consent, but they didn't really ask my consent to sell my information. And so consistently, we are out here acting in ways that are not consent-based.
And we're destroying trust in the process.
We're totally destroying. Well, and that's the other thing is we have not built enough trust and goodwill, right? And so the old method of fundraising is ask, right? Like, see ActBlue for details. Like, I'm just going to send you a million requests, or the times that I am in contact with you, it's not that I'm providing value to you. I'm just asking for me. And I think a lot of us in the fundraising world were brought up like, well, the number one reason that people give is that they're asked. And I think that's actually bullshit. I think it should say you're asked for the right thing at the right time for the right amount by the right person. And by right, I mean, you actually have to build up enough trust in the relationship. And here's the other mistake that I think people make is they think that the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to reach out for coffee. So let me back up for a second. I have lots of conversations with nonprofits, and I ask them like, well, what's your strategy for identifying major donors? Like, what's the strategy? And like, when they're really pushed, a lot of them will admit that they actually don't have a strategy. And the ones that do have a strategy are working on an old playbook. Right. So it's like the definition of insanity. We all know this doesn't work, but like we keep doing the same thing because we have no better way to do it. Now, I could go on. Okay. But part of the issue too is, so I hear this all the time. When I'm reaching out for coffee with donors, they're not responding. Like, what gives here? Like, I want to start building a relationship with them. Well, first of all, you're thinking about it from your perspective. You're not thinking about it from the donor's perspective. And frankly, we have, and as a donor, I've been burned by this too. You ask me for coffee, but what you really want is money, right? So of course, I'm not going to take that meeting because I'm like, I don't even know you like that. And also I've been burned before. So I don't actually believe that you want to have coffee. I believe that you want to solicit me and you're just couching it as like, I'd like to get to know you. And then I'm like getting ready for the, the
I'd like
undercover.
to get to know you. Okay. That sounds like a crypto scam.
Yeah. Like I'm ready for like the sniper shot. So instead, what I really think is we have to think about donor tactics and strategies that mirror consumer behavior. So here's the thing. When I'm buying something, I usually buy online. I don't need to talk to anybody. And if I do go to a store, I actively avoid talking to any salespeople because I'm like, I'm just browsing unless I have a specific question, in which case I will reach out and let you know if I need help. But like, I hate when people get in my face and like, can I help you? Like,
oh my God.
No.
Like Sephora, you get asked 20 times and it's like, no, I just want to look for, lip gloss.
Like I'm browsing. Please get out of my face. Right. That's how we are in our consumer life. And yet we expect donor behavior to be different, right? So we are essentially the equivalent of the Sephora people being like, can I help you? Can I help you? I'm like, no, calm down. I'm not ready yet. I'm not there yet. Because what we know is that most donors will do their own research. They'll look at your socials, they'll go on your website, they may ask some friends, they may look at your 990 if they're super savvy, but like they won't need you until they need you. And for us to push our own agenda on them because we want the gift and the timing is good for us and we think that they should engage with us really is very disrespectful of the fact that the donor has their own wants, needs, desires, and agenda. So let me pause there. I've said a lot, but all to say that I think the way that we've been doing it historically is broken. And I'd be willing to bet fundraisers who are listening to this right now are nodding along like, yeah, this is not working. And I'm spending the bulk of my time chasing after people who don't want to talk to me.
This is the principle that you talk about. It's not about you, it's about them in the context of donor engagement. How can we best cultivate this mindset? So I think the challenge is a lot of people listening are the frontline fundraisers and they're not necessarily the decision makers. And they get these top-down directives, as you know, from the executive director of the board that says, okay, Oprah Winfrey is rich. Like, let's go ask her for money. Or this person in the community is rich. Or you should be having more donor meetings. Like, why aren't you having more donor meetings? How do we sort of cultivate this mindset where we're slowly introducing these concepts to an organization that might be resistant to them?
So many good points. So I think I'm going to disaggregate that question into two chunks because I think on the one hand, you must resist the urge from the higher ups, the board, the ED who are sitting on you like, I need to see activity because they equate activity with progress, right?
Yes.
And it's almost like
number of calls made with progress. It's like that. I agree.
Yeah. It's like I could make all the calls in the world. I could call every single person in the entire country. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm moving things forward in a meaningful way. But here's the thing. The reason why they equate activity with progress is that they don't have a better framework to understand what it means to move people forward, to advance people, right? To engage people versus I do stuff to them. And so there's this illusion of control that we have of, we have a moves management system, right? I love that. Have a moves management. We have a
moves management. It sounds like chess. It sounds like it's a game that you're going to manipulate someone and win.
That's right. It's like, I'm going to do stuff to you. And like, there's some magical combination of things that I'm going to do and words that I'm going to say that will mesmerize you, Julia, to finally give me a gift. And it's like, okay, have you met another human? Like, really? Is that working for you? And so at the level of major gift fundraising, I think the first thing that people really need to think about is like, what's in it for your donor? Because especially with wealthy individuals who are asked all the time for gifts, the question is, what's in it for them, right? Because if you're just another person who's lining up to ask for a check, I'm going to ignore you because you haven't told me what's in it for me. And I don't mean like what's in it for them in the sense of swag or like, I think people automatically be like, well, I send t-shirts. I'm like, no one needs another freaking t-shirt. Please stop it. What I mean is, how am I helping my donor to realize their deepest hopes, dreams, and desires and purpose for the world, right? How am I helping them to do the thing that they want to do. Maybe it's about building legacy. Maybe it's about teaching their kids values. Maybe it's about paying it forward. Maybe it's about making an impact in the world. Like these are all reasons that your donor has for wanting to give to your organization. And the more that I, as a fundraiser, can help my donor to understand their purpose, I give them the gift of helping them to find meaning and purpose in their lives. And the more I can deliver that to them, the more value that they will see in the relationship. So I think the first thing is what's in it for me. Then the second piece is the reason why your ED and your board is on your back about why aren't you having more meetings is because you probably don't have a strategy. And so if you actually had a strategy and that you could explain the timeline and you could explain like, here are the different things that we are going to do. And this is the ROI on it. And this is how we know that people are moving forward. Then they would probably give you a little bit of breathing room. And so let me explain what the strategy is. The strategy is you have a world of people out here, your prospects, right? Basically everyone in the world. And then what you do is you warm up your audience. You're an expert at this, Julia, like the marketing. It's content marketing. Like you're sending out messages to people that are of value to them. And then you create a feedback loop, whether it's a survey or you're looking at digital engagement or you're looking at email opens or you're looking at click-throughs. You're looking at some indication that they want to be engaged further. With that, you create a filter where you're essentially segmenting your list. Do they have capacity? Do they have a reason to give? Is the timing right for them? Was there someone in their life that inspired them to give? And then based on that, so that would be like a pre-qualification step. Then you move them into full qualification. And what happens in full qualification is that you do a discovery call. And in the course of that discovery call, you essentially issue an offer, an invitation. Hey, Julia, what I do as a fundraiser is I help my donors to give in the way that is most impactful for them. So why don't I do this? How about I create a roadmap for you? And the roadmap will be a series of activities that we can do together that will help us to get to know each other. And at the end of this plan, I will put a proposal for funding for your consideration. And by the way, you can opt out at any point, but I just want to make sure that like this is a plan that's going to work for you. How does that sound? And then as a donor, you can be like, yeah, that sounds good. Or like, no, now's not a good time. Or whatever it is. I put a plan together. I put it in front of you. We decide like, okay, this is going to work. This is not going to work. I'm going to be out of town here and blah, 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 blah. And then you just work the plan. So there's no moment where there is a gotcha, like it's totally transparent. And you're actually talking to people who have opted in. So the bulk of your time is not spent chasing people who don't want to talk to you. It's spent with people who have said, yes, I want to be on this journey with you. And I know that it's going to end in a proposal for funding. And the other mistake that I also made is I would spend lots of time with people. And because I wasn't clear with them about like, this is actually a cultivation phase, it would get into this weird like gray area where I was like, oh, now we're friends. Like now they think I just like to hang out with them and they don't actually realize that I intend to ask them for money. It's like, let's just tell them what we intend to do at the beginning. And then they can decide if they want to be on that journey. It's like when I was dating many, many years ago, I've been married for a long time. But when I was dating, I really appreciated when I would go on dates with people and they'd be like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm not really into anything serious, or like, hey, I'm looking for a relationship. I'm like, thank you for telling me. Then I can decide what journey I want to be on with you. But like, it's very confusing if I'm thinking like, this is just a fling and you're thinking like, I'm looking to get married. Like, let's just get on the same page here.
Well, it's like Brene Brown says, clear is kind.
Clear is kind.
I always think about that when I'm speaking to anyone in any capacity. Clear is kind, because being unclear is unkind, because you might be scared to be clear, but for the other person, they're confused, they're overwhelmed, they don't know what's going on. And then it just leads to a lot of time wasting and probably a lot of emotional fallout. So clear is kind, my favorite saying of hers. And that's what you're saying. Like, let's just be open and honest and upfront.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, it will save you a lot of time, because if you're actually engaging with people who are like, yes, I want to be on this journey with you, then great. I mean, look, I'm not necessarily saying that every single person is going to end in a gift, but your hit rate is going to be much better. Your ROI is going to be much better because you're already telling people what the end point is. And so, you know, it's funny, the clear is kind thing. because I love a dating analogy. My friend John Rinaldi first said that even before this whole Brene Brown thing, and it was actually a dating thing. It was like I was dating this guy. I was like not really that into him, but I was like, oh, like I don't really know how to break up with him because he seems really into me. I don't want to hurt his feelings. My friend John was like, Rhea, remember, clear is kind. And I was like, yes. You're right, John. You're right. I have to like cut him loose so that he can find someone who he's meant to be with because it's not me.
Mm-hmm. No, 1000%. It's so hard to do that in practice. It's just so important. I think that's amazing. So I wanted to talk about Giving Tuesday. Can we talk about that? And then we can talk about also, I mean, there's so much else we could talk about. So before we hit record, you had said you have some mixed feelings on Giving Tuesday. I encounter this all the time. I feel like I'm the Giving Tuesday whisperer or counselor or something because I'm constantly talking to people about their mixed feelings about Giving Tuesday. And as
You're like a therapist.
when this is published, it's going to be just a few weeks away. So tell me about your mixed feelings and we can go from there.
Okay. So let me just start by saying, and I say this, I've talked to all of the folks over at Giving Tuesday. I adore them. I respect them. I think they're very smart. I think the concept of a global giving day is fantastic. I love the idea. I love the concept of generosity. Yay. Double click on all the things. Where I have mixed feelings about it is a couple things. A, I think that we as a sector have trained our donors to only give once a year. And we train them to give at the end of the year, which for a lot of us is not necessarily helpful because if our year end is calendar year, then like we don't know if our money is coming in until the very, very end. So I think part of it is about the messaging to the wider donor audience. The second thing is I think it creates a lot of agita for fundraisers because it becomes this very high stakes. Like if I don't get my money on Giving Tuesday, then it screws up my entire year end. The third thing is I think as a donor, it's not that fun. I'm sure you get this too. Like my inbox fills up with a bajillion asks for email for
Well, I do
donations.
think that you and I are different in that way. I don't think the average person gets that only because we donate and we interact with nonprofits so much, but I hear what you're saying.
I would guess that a lot of people get multiple solicitations.
Anyone that's donating will, yes.
Yeah. And it's not that I mind being solicited, but again, I think it's part of the value equation, which is have you actually provided value for me prior to the ask? Like, did you tell me, first of all, did you tell me what you did with my money? Like, that's the big thing. I donate to lots of things. Very few, or actually, I'm going to say zero organizations actually tell me what they've done with my money. And not in like a granular, like, here, $5 did this, but like, just tell me like, what happened this year? What did you do? What's that? Like, what impact did I help to make? How are you making me feel good about the fact that I gave you my hard-earned money, right? It's almost like they feel entitled to this money and I'm just this ATM that they hit me once a year. So as a donor, it doesn't feel great. So it's less about Giving Tuesday and more about, I would say, stewardship behavior, which is like you generally as a nonprofit probably have not done a great job of closing the story loop for people about what did you do with your money? Why is your money better spent with us versus anybody else? And how do I make you feel? And then the last thing I'll say is I think because it creates so much agita for nonprofits, I think people spend a lot of time and energy on Giving Tuesday. And I don't necessarily see that it results in ROI that's worth the amount of time and effort and energy. And I think maybe it was you, Julia, who said your rule is to spend 30 minutes, or maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was you, but spend 30 minutes, write your social media posts, write your emails, and then done. Like, don't obsess over it. Don't spend that much time. And I think because we make such a big deal of it, and it's almost like if I don't do this big thing, I'm doing the wrong thing because all my other nonprofit peers are doing it. And if I don't do it, I'm going to be left out. So I think that's the other problem. And then the last thing I'll say is it tends to be very mass communication, right? So I get like, you're not segmenting your list. Like you're hitting me as if I'm just everybody else. And the way that you should be talking to your returning donors is different than the way you should be talking to your news donors, which is different than how you should be talking to your volunteers. Like personalization is key. And I think AI is part of being able to personalize at scale. But I think nonprofits still haven't gotten the message around personalization, which by the way is beyond like I'm inserting your first name.
Oh, I know. I think that Giving Tuesday is a symptom. And I also want to go back to something you said before where nonprofits really need to be like, are we blaming Giving Tuesday or are we looking at what we're doing? Are we looking at us?
Yeah.
Because Giving Tuesday is such an easy scapegoat for fundraisers and for nonprofits, but it's just everything you said. To reiterate, the old rules are dead. We can't continue to put the 2014 playbook for Giving Tuesday into what we're doing in 2024. And we really need to be more strategic and intentional. And what I've seen, some fundraisers just saying, okay, we're just going to do a thank you campaign, or we're going to do an advocacy campaign, or we're going to send out an email like you just said, one of those emails that says, here's what we did all year. Be prepared for our year-end campaign. So I've been seeing it kind of being used to experiment in a lot of different ways. I completely agree with everything you're saying, but I also think in my work, especially around social media, that nonprofits tend to blame the platform, they blame the day, they blame the weather, they blame everything else, and they're not looking internally as to whether or not their communications are permission-based, like you said, like, are we buying email lists? Are we selling our email list? Are we just spamming everybody? And they're not looking at whether their campaigns are intentional and meaningful, and like, how have they communicated throughout the year? Mm-hmm. So to go on that, I want to hear from you. What do you see? I mean, we talked about the mistakes nonprofits make in donor cultivation. What would you like to see nonprofits be doing to, build relationships? We said it 50 times, but like to cultivate donors and to make them feel like they are partners in our mission and less like ATMs.
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's about creating a plan that is of value to your donor and not to you. So I think a lot of times, because we're not talking to our donors, we think in our brains like, oh, they're definitely going to want to come to a site visit. They're definitely going to want to come to coffee. They're definitely going to want to meet our board members. I don't know. They might not, right? And so it's like Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. I'm like, every question you have can be answered by talking to your donors. And I think if you go in with the perspective of how can I add value to them, not necessarily what I think is valuable, not necessarily my timeline, not necessarily my agenda, but how can I be in service to my donors to help them, bring them into a partnership that is meaningful and rich to them? That's how we get true partnership. Again, let's talk about relationships. Julia, you're married, right?
Yes.
So as two married ladies, I think we can both acknowledge that the reason we are still married is that you continue to invest in the relationship. It's a relationship of partnership. It's not a relationship of extraction. Like if I had a relationship, it's hard work, right? It's like human beings. Human beings are weird and messy and like inconsistent and all the things. But if it's worth it, you do the work. If you continue to see value in, okay, this might be a tough conversation, but I'm going to have it because I'm invested in the relationship. I mean, I think in part it is that we're understaffed. And so we get really transactional and we're like, we check it off the box. And in my mind, once I get the gift, I've closed the gift. But in the mind of my donor, I just thought that was the opening of the relationship. Like I thought we were at the start.
Not the closing. Oh,
yeah. So it's not about closing the gift. It's about opening a relationship. And so when in your mind, you're just closing the gift, you're leaving all these open loops where people are like, hey, I thought we were just getting to know each other. I thought we were just getting started. And here's the other truth is a lot of major gifts come after a small gift, right? They're just testing the waters to see what you're going to do with the gift and how they're going to be treated. And so the truth of the matter is, a lot of times when we talk about major gifts, it usually comes from people you had no idea about, people who are not even on your radar necessarily, right? Because that's the other thing. I have a bone to pick about wealth screening. Like people think that wealth screening will tell you all the things. I think wealth screening is a data point. It is not the data point. Like just because someone on paper is a millionaire does not mean that they are necessarily going to give to you. And by the way, when you live in areas like Boston, New York, San Francisco, LA, a lot of that net worth is in your real estate. Like if you own a house or a condo or whatever. And like, as much as I love you, I'm not going to sell my condo to give you a donation.
I think that we don't do enough with being more intentional in looking, like it's almost like grant writing.
Yeah.
Just sending a grant out to every foundation within a 50-mile radius without really doing the research on Are we aligning with their objectives and priorities? What have they given to before? Have we talked to the program officer? It's a lot of like spray and pray.
Yeah.
So how do you suggest that nonprofits balance seeking new donors and retaining existing ones? Because I know a lot of people listening are probably like in small shops and they might have to wear all the hats. Like, how can we strike that balance?
Oh my gosh. I love this question, Julia. Okay, wait. Fun fact. I just found this out. You might have seen it in my newsletter, but I just found out the lifetime customer value of a Starbucks customer.
I didn't see it in your newsletter, but I'm dying to know because I love Starbucks.
Okay. So,
oh no, I actually am scared to know. What is it?
The average Starbucks customer spends over a lifetime with Starbucks $15,000. $15,000. That is a lot of freaking coffee, right?
Oh God. Yeah. Between me and my daughter, it's probably true.
Yeah. $15,000. Okay. So here's the thing. Starbucks can spend a lot of money on acquisition because they know over the lifetime that every single person who walks through Starbucks on average will spend $15,000 with them. Now, if we took that concept and we applied it to the nonprofit sector, the problem that we have is that most of us have a leaky bucket, which is to say that more than 50% of the donors that we pour in come out the bottom, right? So we spend lots of money and time and energy on acquisition, but then we don't spend the time on retention. So what I'm going to say to everyone out there listening is if you do nothing else this year, I would like for you to prioritize retention, because if your retention rate is anything less than 50%, that means that you are just basically pouring money down the drain, right? You're getting these people and they're just leaving you. And so I want to see your retention rates up, certainly above 50, but like 60, 70, as high as you can get it. And if the only thing you did this year was retain and upgrade your donors, you would be in a much better position, because here's the other thing. If you're spending a lot of time on acquisition, but you haven't plugged the hole, again, it's not going to be that effective because you're just pouring money down the drain. So to answer your question, I would say, if I were to advise folks out there, 80% of your time this year should be about retention and 20% about acquisition.
Love it. I love a framework. I love that. That's awesome. I completely agree. And of course, in my work on social media, it is a lot about acquisition, but it's also about stewardship and staying top of mind and sharing stories and creating that trust and affinity that's so important. So looking forward, what are some key donor trends that you're seeing? What should fundraisers be paying attention to as we enter this year-end giving phase?
Yeah. So many things. So let me back up a second. When I think about scaling up your fundraising operations, I kind of think about the 4 points of constriction, or your 4 constraints, right? So your first constraint is traffic. Are there literally enough eyeballs on the thing that you do? And this is where you're so good, like social media followers, email list, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the first point of constriction. The second point of constriction is conversion. Are you converting enough of these people to donors? The third is donor value, right? Are you asking big enough that you're actually making money? Are you retaining? Are you asking frequently enough? And then fourth is retention. And so what I want people to think about is work on the first constraint first. So what that means, and I would guess for 99% of the nonprofits out there, the first point of constraint is the traffic. Are you sending enough emails? Are you posting enough on social? And I don't mean spamming people. I mean, are you creating high value content that gives people a reason to notice, to stop the scroll, to share, to click, to comment? Again, that goes back to the first thing that we said, like, if that's not happening, maybe your marketing just isn't good enough. Maybe you're putting out crappy content. If every time you send out an email and you get a whole bunch of unsubscribe, that should tell you that you're sending out bad emails, right? So that's constriction point 1. And so in terms of trends, I think we need to get better about micro niching. So I think we go deep, not broad. And so instead of talking to the masses, I think we need to get super duper clear about the subset of people who are true fans, right? I think about Kevin Kelly, the 1,000 true fans.
Yes, 1,000 true fans.
Yeah. Who are your super fans? Who are the people who are going to show up at everything you do, who are going to donate every single time you ask, who are going to buy your swag, who are going to talk about you to your friends? Talk to those people and ignore the rest. Because here's the thing. we live in too noisy a world right now to try for the masses. What we need to do is shrink down and build deep community with the people who love us and become super fans. Because I was talking about this yesterday, like Apple has like $1 bajillion, right? And Apple is not even able to sell to every single person on this planet. And Apple's marketing budget is way bigger than yours. I think the trend is go deep, not broad. I think the trend is send better emails, tell better stories, engage on social in a more effective way that actually gives people a reason to follow, gives them a reason to take an off-platform action. And then I think transitioning to this consent-based model is going to be key because it puts the control in the hands of the donors. Like the donors have been wanting control, and not control in the way of like, I want to tell you what to do, but control in the way of like, I want to know that I'm a partner in this work, not just a walking ATM. So those are kind of my top predictions.
Well, I'm sad to have to wrap up this conversation. It's been fantastic. And I won't wait a couple of years again before having you on the podcast again. Where can people work with you, Rhea? Where can they find out more about your work and connect with you?
Thank you for asking. So I definitely recommend that everyone joins my newsletter. It comes out every week. Even if you don't like what I'm saying, you'll see the strategy behind it, and hopefully
it's a great newsletter. It's not written by ChatGPT. It's clearly written like from the heart. I love it.
Oh, thanks, Julia. I like it. It's fun. Plus, you get cute dog photos, so like that's a bonus.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh, the dog photos.
Who can't use a cute dog photo in their inbox? So there's that, and then I have my program, Big Ass Gift. So if you have an existing individual donor program and you want to get into the major gift game, check it out. You can find it on my website, Rhea Wong, RheaWong.com. Wait, before we jump, can I just add one more thing about the X factor?
Yes. Oh, the X factor of fundraisers. I love that. Yes.
Okay. So I think
that I didn't get to.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think, first of all, I believe that fundraising is a skill, and like any other skill, you can learn it. What I will say is I think that there's this misconception that fundraising is pitchy. Like, I'm just going to go in with like my deck and like say some kind of magical combination of words. The truth is the best fundraisers are introverts. The best fundraisers know how to listen. The best fundraisers are curious about other people, like genuinely curious, and not in a way that I'm like curious because I'm trying to like manipulate you into a thing, but curious because I want to know who you are as a person, Julia. And I want to know how, if I can align the thing that you care about with the work of my organization, or if not, like if you're like, hey, Rhea, guess what? I just really deeply care about saving the whales. And I, as a fundraiser, can be like, you know what, Julia, I can refer you to a couple of organizations that are doing fantastic work to help you as a donor to achieve the impact that you want in the world. So I think when I think about the best, they're connectors, and they're empathetic, and they're good listeners. So when I think about the X factor, it's about having a genuine curiosity about the other person and a willingness, as sort of a servant's heart, if you will.
I came to be a development director from journalists. I was a journalist and I was a communicator, and that's what I studied in college. And I agree with you that genuine curiosity, that ability to listen and ask questions is absolutely vital. Like people, like you said, people think fundraisers are salespeople, but they actually need to be those connectors. They have to be curious. They have to think like journalists. They have to be empathetic. So it's actually the complete opposite, I think. So wonderful. I love that. Ending on that. Everyone, I encourage you to go to rheawong.com, sign up for the newsletter. And Rhea, you have a podcast too.
I do. Nonprofit Lowdown. So you can check it out on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to interviews with Julia.
Yay. I know. I was just on. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm just always thrilled to talk to you.
Thanks, Ren. This is so fun. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review, because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, You can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.